Hello and welcome to Africa Live, where we bring you African and global news from all perspectives. I'm Famida Miller. Also coming up in the next half hour. Crucial lifeline, we focus on the impact of international money transfer services to Somalia, currently under threat. Best of the best, Nigeria's under-17 football teams crowned world champion for a record fourth time. A suspected car bomb attack outside a popular hotel in the Somali capital has killed at least 6 people. Witnesses say a suicide bomber drove a car packed with explosives to the gate of the hotel in central Mogadishu. At least 15 people were wounded, including a member of the Somali parliament. Mogadishu has often been the target of attacks by Al-Shabaab militia, an Al-Qaeda-aligned Islamist group that was driven out of the capital by African troops 2 years ago. Now, for more on this attack, we're joined by CCTV's Mohammed Himoge. He's live in Mogadishu. Mohammed, what is the latest that you have regarding this attack?
For me, it now appears that this attack was planned to have been suicide explosions inside and outside the hotel room. We've been told a young man disguised as a customer walked into the restaurant yesterday at around 5 p.m. That's Friday, local time here, and went in with these explosives together with a laptop. Luckily, what he wanted to detonate didn't actually blow up, and when he tried to fuse together the wires and detonate himself, he was seized by authorities, and then shortly after he was arrested, a second car bomb exploded outside the hotel, and that is the one that killed a Somali diplomat. Killed 3 security officers and a civilian, and injured about 26 according to the police spokesman.
Now, Mohammed, if we look back over the last 6 weeks, we have a certain level of calm in Mogadishu. Now, it's quite clear that militant operations are still clearly in place in that city.
Well, for me, this particular case and the ones that have been happening over the last 6 months point to one simple fact, which is that these insurgent attacks hardly augur well for a reconstruction process that is already ongoing in the capital. It means the country is not out of the woods yet. It means the country is not past the critical phase. And it also means that Al-Shabaab are quite relentless in going ahead with their missions, either suicide or roadside bombs. And that means for someone who's ready to die, people here will tell you it's quite hard to stop. Not AMISOM forces, nor the Somali forces can stop that. And many analysts are of the view that the only way to stop this is to boost the intelligence system and seize them before they reach their destinations. Otherwise, these attacks, at least over the last 6 months, every single month, there have been one major attack. And that means these attacks would be, this country has not crossed past the point where they can seize these suicide blasts before they reach the target. It means the attacks would be there as long as Al-Shabaab are an insurgent guerrilla force.
So, Mohammed, you know, there certainly is a concern about intelligence, and also you just touched on reconstruction efforts. What does this mean for the country going forward? Just as soon as they do make strides, they go back a couple of steps after attacks.
In the very least, it means a discouraging gesture for all the investors, prospective investors, because for the country that has been under attack, take for example the capital city Mogadishu, since May, 5 months down the line, every single month there's been a major attack. We're speaking about a Qatari delegation on May, we are speaking about June and UNDP attacks, we're speaking about April at the UNDP compounds. I mean, every single month there has been one major blast here. So in the very least, it discourages reconstruction efforts and investment drives at a time when this country was showing that we are past, we have actually defeated Al-Shabaab, and we have liberated large swathes of land in the capital and neighboring towns and routes. But the bigger problem that is existing is insurgency, and the fact that Al-Shabaab has transformed and changed tack from a conventional war force into a guerrilla force that is able to attack at will.
All right, Mohammed, thanks for your time. We'll leave it there for the moment. We're speaking there to CCTV's Mohammed Himoge live in Mogadishu. Now, Madagascar's presidential race will go to a runoff vote next month No candidate won an outright majority in last month's first round vote, meaning the two frontrunners will have to square it out on December 20th. Susan Mongeli reports.
The head-to-head contest will pit Robinson Jean-Louis, who won 21.1% of the votes, against Harry Rajaonarimampiana, who came second with 15.93%. The president of Madagascar's Electoral Commission, Beatrice Atala, said the irregularities cited by some of the candidates will be ironed out before the second round.
The Senate Electoral Commission will do its best within the limits of the law to ensure that the problems we had in the first round will be corrected, including the voters' register for the next round.
Although they gave a nod to the overall voting process, some observers raised concern over glitches in the registration of voters, which left large numbers unable to cast ballots and opaque campaign fundraising. Madagascar's Prime Minister Omar Biriziki lauded the candidates and voters, saying the voting environment had remained peaceful.
Despite the large number of 33 candidates, I think we performed our duties well on the day, because the candidates campaigned for a whole month peacefully and the election was held in a peaceful environment, with the candidates demonstrating mutual respect for each other.
But there are fears the December runoff risks escalating political tensions. This is because the two aspirants are backed by Madagascar's biggest political rivals. Harry Rajaonarimampiana is backed by coup leader turned president Andry Rajoelina, while Jean-Louis Robinson is supported by Marc Ravalomanana. Diplomats caution the electoral process could still be derailed. They are watching the military carefully. There are still those opposed to the return from exile of Ravalomanana, a scenario widely expected if Robinson wins. Susan Mongeli, CCTV.
Let's now have a look at other news from across the continent. Libyan forces made a rare show of force on the streets of Benghazi in a bid to put an end to instability that's left the city plagued by assassinations and small-scale bomb attacks. The show by the Thunderbolt Brigade drew cheers from assembled crowds frustrated by Benghazi's security woes. Authorities in Tripoli have struggled to impose order over the rest of the country, with militias often taking the law into their own hands. Elsewhere, 3 people were killed on Friday during clashes between the MNLA Tuareg separatist group and the Malian army in the north of the country. The MNLA claimed on its website that the Malian army arrested several civilians and executed 3 of them, wounding 3 others near Manaka. The Malian Defense Ministry says a group of armed bandits had attacked a Malian army patrol in the same area. A vehicle, arms, ammunition and communication equipment were seized. And finally, more than 1 million people in the Central African Republic are under threat from hunger because of poor harvest and violence. Now that's according to the UN's World Food Programme. A survey by the agency shows that the last harvest could run out at the beginning of 2014, 4 months earlier than usual. The impoverished landlocked nation's been marred in chaos since the Seleka coalition of rebels ousted longtime President Francois Bozize in March. Let's now take a quick break on Africa Live. When we come back, comprehensive reforms quest, a plenary meeting of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee kicks off in Beijing. In a crucial lifeline, we focus on the impact of international money transfer services to Somalia, currently under threat.
A defiant Mohamed Morsi dramatically forced the adjournment of his trial barely before it began in a court in Egypt. Find out what this trial means for the Muslim Brotherhood and why it is the sternest test yet for Egypt's legal system. This week in Talk Africa.
Welcome back. The third plenary meeting of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee is underway in the capital, Beijing. The key meeting is expected to set China's economic policy for the coming year. 1 year after China's new leadership was announced, the CPC Central Committee is now ready to unveil a comprehensive reform package. Over the next 4 days, China's decision makers will draw out plans to lead the country toward further reforms and better growth and stability. Political analysts say the closed-door meeting is expected to announce reforms aimed at lessening the control role the government plays in the economy. The possible measures to do that could include cutting red tape and more targeted and efficient regulations. In the long term, China has been looking at ways to stabilize growth and rebalance the economic structure, which includes evening out the proportions of investment and consumption in the economy. Some of the key challenges expected to be taken up include corruption and overinvestment. Now, China has become an increasingly important ally to Africa. Xi Jinping's presidency has heralded closer ties in terms of investment and political influence. And with the third plenary session, many hope more engagement is on the cards. CCTV's Susan Mongeli has the story.
As a vivid signal of intent, Xi Jinping began his time in office by visiting Africa. It was a 6-day tour that took in Tanzania, South Africa and the Republic of Congo. And Xi made clear Beijing values its ties with the continent.
In 2012, bilateral trade grew to nearly $200 billion between China and Africa. People-to-people exchanges reached over 1.5 million. China's direct investment to Africa has reached $15 billion. In the past 50 years, China sent 18,000 medical personnel to Africa. 250 million African people have been medically treated. People in Africa have also provided great support and selfless help to the Chinese people.
Xi also hosted a string of African leaders in Beijing, among them Nigeria's Goodluck Jonathan, and a month later, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta. Both leaders were able to conclude lucrative investment agreements. And South Africa recently sent a high-powered delegation to talk business with Beijing, led by Deputy President Halim Motlanthe. Beijing has shown itself far more sympathetic to the cause of the African Union than the West. Just this week, it backed AU calls for a deferral of the trial of Kenya's leaders at the International Criminal Court. Relationships between China and Africa have never been this close. So for many on the continent, there's a lot of hope and expectation around the plenary session. Susan Mongeli, CCTV.
Remittances are the lifeblood of Somalia's economy. Millions living overseas send money home to their families, but that support's been threatened of late. British bank Barclays wants to halt its banking services to one of Africa's largest remittance companies, Dabshil. Barclays fears the money could find its way into criminal activities. Dabshil's won a court injunction against Barclays, but many fear that may only be temporary. CCTV's Natalie Ferry and Mohammed Morga filed this report.
Dr. Arrow Hersey has spent 14 years living and working as a doctor in the UK. She runs a small gynecology service for the Somali community in East London. But helping her relatives back in Mogadishu is also a major priority. Dr. Arrow sends her relatives around $400 a month and is among the 100,000 Somalis living in the UK that transfer money via Somalia's largest remittance company, Dahabshil.
The money that we send them back home, they need it and they don't have any, there's no any people who's helping them. So they are relying on the relatives who's living like UK and America, other European countries.
But if Barclays closes Dahabshil's bank account, this lifeline could be cut off. How her family would cope is a major worry for Dr. Arrow.
It really will be panic, and it's something can created in back home Somalia, starvation and the problems and the poverty, and also psychological effect for the people that will be affected if there's no money transfer to them, because how they can live.
The gynecologist waits in hope that a solution can be reached so that she can keep sending desperately needed money back to Mogadishu. Somalia has no banking system following decades of civil war. So for the millions of Somalis like Dr. Arrow that need to send money back home, remittance companies are the only option. And the system works very well. Dr. Arrow's relatives can collect urgently needed money she sends either the same or the following day, which for now at least she is still able to do.
And 7,000 kilometers away, the money comes through for Hersi's extended family in Mogadishu. Mohammed Abdi Mohammed receives his cash from Dahab Shil.
This is an issue that concerns millions of Somalis. See, we receive money in 5 minutes. Immediately, the sender debits.
It's quick and relatively easy. Just prove identity and sign. Remittances are a lifeline in Somalia. The United Nations estimates more than 4 million Somalis rely on this money to survive. That's more than 40% of the population. After years of conflict, a few people in Somalia have jobs or bank accounts. For most people, money from relatives overseas is the only way they can pay for food, medicine, and education.
Somalis receive money from Britain, America, Sweden, and other Western countries. So imagine if Barclays closed these accounts. It will have adverse effects on many people.
How long this lifeline can remain is a big question. Barclays is still determined to cut off its service to Dahab Shil. Experts say that will merely drive the remittance business underground, making it even tougher for people like Mohammed to support their families. Mohammed Hirmoge, CCTV, Mogadishu.
African Americans in the U.S. state of North Carolina say they're facing a radical reversal of hard-won racial equality. America's civil rights struggle led to national laws designed to empower all Americans to vote freely and fairly. But opponents of a new state voting law say African Americans are being excluded from the process. From North Carolina, our correspondent Andrea Arenas reports.
New Oxley Hill Baptist Church in the town of Mary Hill, North Carolina, with a congregation of just 200 people. In Mary Hill, 60% are African American. Their ancestors were slaves, and only 5 decades ago, most couldn't vote. Blood was spilled here during the fight to gain basic civil rights. Now Reverend Bonner Horton says the battle has resumed.
One of the proudest moments in the African American communities is that right to vote. To see seniors at 70, 80, 90, 100 years old getting up and getting on a van or in the back of an automobile and driving them to the poll to cast their vote is something that they know generations prior to them had died for them to do, and we take that seriously.
A new state law requires all voters to show a new ID card. It sounds simple, but groups opposing the new law say it will exclude many African Americans from both state and nationwide elections. Many elderly residents don't have birth certificates.
A lot of them were born in the house. Like my godmother, she was born in the house. Sometimes the documents are wrong, the birth certificates are wrong. It creates a hardship.
It suppresses the vote for the elderly, the people, the older people that was born by midwives, which don't have a birth certificate and can't find one. This is going to suppress them because they got to go through all this trouble to try to find out when they was born, where they was born, and all the trouble of trying to get a birth certificate.
About 12% of Mary Hill residents are 65 years or older. Most of them did not finish high school, and now they are supporting the pastor's campaign.
These individuals that are before me today have made a decision that they're willing to sit here, no matter how long it takes, if they need to individually, one by one, voice their concern and their displeasure with the decision concerning the voter ID.
In the state capital, Raleigh, the Republican Party denies that the new law they promoted is racially biased, saying it is designed to eliminate voter fraud. Opponents say there is no evidence that voter fraud is a major problem here. Additionally, they accuse Republicans of tactical foul play in this swing state. In the last general election, 96% of black voters opted for Democrats. New Oxley Hill Baptist Church has been a part of the African American community in this area for 128 years. And although they are far away from Washington, D.C., where laws are made, people who come to this church say that they will do much more than only pray in order to defend their right to vote. Andrea Arenas, CCTV, Mary Hill, North Carolina.
Well, it's time now for another quick break. We'll have sports just after this, including best of the best. Nigeria's under-17 football teams crowned world champion for a record 4th time.
J'ai vu les gens mourir. Deux messieurs qui étaient tombés parce qu'on les a piétinés, qui voulaient voir Franco et qui voulaient même toucher Franco.
Mais quand il a grandi, il a pris sa forme. Il était devenu dangereux.
Mon but, mon souhait, c'est que Franco puisse être un des Mozart de la musique africaine.
Oh.